Right, Judy. Showing over here. Yeah, that's me. Back then. You may be questioning what is going on with my face. That is a Hulk Hogan mustache from a 90s theme party I had about a week earlier. It took 5 hours and 4 rounds of bleach to get to that level, so I'd done so much damage to the skin underneath that I actually could not shave it. And I went into the final of this competition with that absolute monstrosity on my face. That's the caliber of speaker you will be having tonight. Yes. The talk, feeling moreish, we're going light and bite-sized, doesn't really mean all that much now, but will hopefully mean something to some of you at the end of the presentation. So let's get into it. We have phones, laptops, computers, etc. And if we bring it down a level, what we actually have is circuits. And we bring it down another level. These circuits are comprised of these little bad boys here, which some of you may know as transistors. And for you that don't know that much about that, basically it's transistors are the backing for binary, and you can either have current flow through a transistor, which translates to a 1, or it doesn't flow through and it's a 0, and then you get your 1s and your 0s, and then that's the basis for code, and then that's the basis for everything running. Which is good. There's two main parts to a transistor. There is the transistor itself and the wires. I'll be talking a little bit more about the wires, but yes, we will get into that. If we swing it back to 1967, we have this dude, Gordon Moore, and Gordon Moore comes up with this eponymous law known as Moore's Law. And what that law boils down to is less is more or less. What I mean by that convoluted ass statement is the less space taken up by a transistor, the more transistors you can have per area. And thus the more transistors you have, the more computations, and yada yada, technology gets faster. You get the general idea. What he actually said was something more along the lines of the number of components in an integrated circuit will double every 2 years. And that looks something a little bit like this. Sorry for those of you at the back that can't see, but it doesn't really matter. There's some numbers and we'll get to it. Up the y-axis, we have transistor counts. So that's how many we have. And on the x-axis, we have year. And you kind of see that it sort of follows a straight line roughly. Because tryhard's a scientist, and we just... Tryhard's a scientist? Scientists are tryhards. And we decided to try and keep up with this law. And we did, and it kind of became a self-fulfilling prophecy. However, you may notice that it is not quite a perfectly straight line, because these are more guidelines than actual rules. And the actual stuff works something a little bit like this. And basically you have this bit in the middle, in the late 90s and early 2000s, when they had these new system architectures, and they kind of went ham with it, and they did a really good job, and everyone was like, wow, so efficient. But you will notice towards the end, towards modern day, this only goes up to 2018, because that's the best I could find, the most recent, it starts petering off a little bit. You may be wondering what is happening up here. Good question, audience. What's happening is we get another plot, that's right, 2 plots. We get another plot of the size of the transistors this time, or transistor critical dimensions, if you will, up the y-axis, and then along the x-axis we have year. And because we're scientists and we like to extrapolate, if we extrapolate this bad boy out, what we find is that we're reaching about 1 nanometer, or 4 to 10 atoms, depending on the atom, by the year 2027. This is actually not very good, because transistor size is starting to approach the atomic scale. And what happens when you approach the atomic scale is the classical physics begins to fall to shit. Quantum physics starts to dominate, and you have these effects that take over, something known as leakage current, where basically your 1s can become 0s, your 0s can become 1s, and everything goes a bit... So, that's one problem. The second problem is that the world's supply of easily accessible silicon, that is, silicon being the basis for computer chips, is going bye-bye by the year 2030. Some of you may be aware that silicon is actually the Earth's crust's most abundant element, but the grade of silicon that we need for these computer chips is actually not something that can be found very easily, and it's caused some geopolitical tensions, cough cough, Taiwan and China. So, we're going to get onto something known as the wire problem. This is kind of the basis of my research. Some of you may remember from grade 9 or 10 or whatever it is here. Electricity happens because current flows from point A to point B, and it does this with electrons, like this little guy just here. What happens when you flow from point A to point B is your electron will smack into atoms along the way, and it will generate heat. This is why your phones and your laptops heat up. This is a massive problem, and it's a massive problem specifically for the data centers that we use to store our data. So like Google, Amazon, Google, Amazon, 2 A's in a row was not a good idea. They use it to store data, and it's a big old issue. So, if we take our circuit from before, and we have our electrons flowing around it, what you find is that this circuit will eventually heat up. This circuit will heat up and waste energy regardless of whether or not the input power is renewable. So, whether or not we're using solar panels, or wind turbines, or hydro, or whatever it may be, nuclear, you're still going to get this circuit-based heating, which is no bueno for the whole world. 43%, this big chunk of data center energy is just used to cool the servers. And to kind of really bring it home to you guys, like how much energy is being expended, I'm going to leave you with some incredibly fun facts. So, 1,384 exabytes, or that with that many zeros, of global data is stored in data centers. And to put that in perspective a little bit, all words ever spoken since the dawn of humanity is 5 exabytes. So there's a lot of data. And what this translates to is, even if we look just smaller scale Australia, the amount of energy that's used just for data centers is more than Woolies, Coles, Aldi, and IGA combined. The last time I did a similar presentation to this, I used this fact, and it was only Coles and Woolies at that point. I've actually had to update it since then because it's got worse. And another unfun fact, if we go back over here because I'm getting in the way of my own bloody stuff, is if Bitcoin. Who here still thinks about Bitcoin? Fucking no one. It is a redundant point at this point, but this is a recent fact. I just calculated this. If Bitcoin mining was a country, it would be 25th in the world for energy consumption. That is more than Switzerland, Denmark, and Austria combined. Bitcoin! No one cares. So, you may be wondering who this man is up here. He is far less famous than Gordon Moore, but he's got a deep meaning to me. He is the head of my centre. This is our main man, Michael Fuhrer. He's from America. He has a very silky, smooth voice. He was probably wasted in physics a little bit and should have been doing stuff like Audible. Like, whenever that man talks, I'm listening to what he is saying. He can start a cult, I'd be on board. But that's besides the point. Michael got positive with this question. How do we make effective dissipationless, that is to say resistance-free, heat-free, transistor devices using quantum-scale physics? To which our main man said, say no more. He started FLEET, which is the ARC Centre of Excellence in Future Low Energy Electronics Technology, but because we're Australians, we like to smush everything down, make it short and easy to say, and it becomes FLEET, because it's an acronym that's easy, and it's a mouthful otherwise. There was 3 main themes to FLEET. I'm going to be talking about 2 of them. 1 is superfluids, a word most of you are probably not aware of, and 2, light transformed materials, which you'll have more of an idea of. It's light, and it transforms the material and makes it behave in a certain way. But I'll talk about superfluids. Superfluids, if we go back to our beautiful little circuit diagram that I had earlier, what essentially happens is you have the same flow as previously, but you find you actually don't have any wasted energy. And to kind of put this in an analogy, if you imagine, annoyingly, I was hoping for a lapel mic so I could wave both my hands, but we're just going to wave one in the air like we don't care. If we imagine a bunch of people in a stadium, and they're all waving their hands back and forth randomly with no real coordination, we'll say MCG, because I don't care about the Marvel Stadium. You have all these people waving hands back and forth, no coordination, and what you do is you lower the energy of the system, you lower the temperature, you lower the speed, and the slower and slower they go, eventually everybody starts to sync up, and what you have is you have this massive Mexican wave propagating around the stadium. And the whole idea is that even if 1 or 2 people stop waving their hands, you're still going to have this wave propagating. That is to say, if you have 1 or 2 of these hit into an atom, the system still works, which is great. And it would look something a little bit like this. A little bit faster. And it would flow with no wasted energy. However, there is one big caveat to this, is that you need really, really, really cold temperatures to form it. So minus 270 degrees, which is not particularly useful for phones or laptops or data centers and the like. So what do you do about that? I know there's a lot of jargon here. I've tried to boil it down to like 5 main physicsy words, but we've got another big one. Polaritons. Again, many of you will have absolutely no idea what polaritons are. They are basically an exciton, which we're not going to get into. It's a positive and negative charge. It's kind of all you need to know. They are spinning around each other, having a jolly old time. All we're going to get is we're going to get our good bud, a little photon, a little particle of light. We're going to yeet it at the system. And if all is good in the proverbial herd, what we will find is that we form a polariton. And polaritons are beneficial for 2 main reasons. Because they are half light, they weigh essentially nothing. Many of you will be aware that light doesn't really weigh that much. They're half matter. These positive and negative charges can still interact with each other. And what that basically means is we can form this superfluid we were talking about before, but instead we can form it at room temperature, which is excellent. And if we could just do that willy-nilly, then obviously technology in life would be much better. But you still need to form these polaritons in the first place. It turns out light and matter don't really like being smushed together all that much. And so what you need is you need some system to form them. To say what I said, polaritons require strong light-matter interactions. And we use something known as a microcavity to achieve this. And it's basically a little sandwich guy. We have this here, and you've got a DBR, which is essentially a glorified mirror. And the whole idea is you'd have a light coming in the top, and it would bounce back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But obviously you still need those excitons, you still need the matter for it to stick to. And so you also have your active medium, which is where your excitons form. At the moment, we are using things called traditional semiconductors to do this, and it's very, very complex fabrication techniques. That is to say, they are very slow to make. Sorry, I'm going to swing over here. Take absolutely bloody ages to make, and they are also very, very expensive to make. Like insane. They are like yay big and they cost thousands of dollars. Like it's not scalable, it's not feasible for modern technology. However, very good at smashing light and matter together. That's the one thing they do well because of the fact that that's their one job. If we swing to the systems that I want to look at, they're these funky crystals called perovskites. Complex chemical formula, some crystals. It's nice and orange. When you make them, they're this beautiful little orange colour, assuming you do it well, otherwise they go this sort of fugly, murky white colour. But what happens when we have perovskites? Perovskites are great for solar cells, and what makes them good for solar cells makes them good for polaritons. There's a bunch of points here, which we don't care about because they're very convoluted. And again, they boil down to 2 main points. 1, they can form polaritons and do it at room temperature. And 2, they can be synthesized, that is, they can be made using a process known as spin coating. And you may be like, I don't really know what spin coating is. That's good, because I have a little animation for you. You get whatever you're whacking your perovskite down on, your substrate, your surface of your material. You will pipette your little solution of perovskite onto said substrate. You will then spin it really, really fast. And you'll heat it. And that's it. That's it. 3 easy steps. Yes, there's some technical work that needs to go into it, but 3 easy steps to get yourself a bona fide perovskite. It's also very, very thin, which is why it looks so teeny tiny compared to the rest of the substrate. And this has some pros and it has some cons as well. So big pros, it's very fast to do if you get the recipe right. It is also incredibly cheap to do, especially comparing it to our slide before. However, it's quite shite at smushing light and matter together. It's about 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 times worse than the systems we were talking about earlier. So, house dance, bless up. What if we combined the 2? What if we took our perovskites? We took our microcavity. Perovskite microcavity, yes! Thank you, I did not expect to clap for that. You don't know what Johnny did, man. I'm just spitballing here. What? Save your applause till the end of the presentation, please. So, I did make them. We still don't know if they work yet, but that is them. You've seen these beautiful coloured ones at the top. We won't talk about the ones at the bottom so much. They're on a different material and they don't look quite as nice, but they are there, and they're glorious to me, personally. They might be to you, but there's a lot of work. So, again, they are fast to make. They are cheap to make. they're kind of in the middle ground. Like, look, they're not as good as those microcavities we were talking about before, but they still do a pretty good job of the smushing the light and matter together and forming those polaritons we were talking about earlier. So, what happens if I take my perovskite microcavity and I shine a whopping great laser at it? I inject a bunch of photons into the system. Will we see our polaritons? Will they form a superfluid? That should technically say 1 PhD later. 4 years of COVID and other stuff. But I'm a doctor now, baby, so that probably tells you something. It fucking works! Yeah! The dull boy is having its polaritons, and the bright thing is those polaritons forming a superfluid. So we got polariton, superfluid. Polaritons, superfluid. Low threshold, above threshold. And because naturally I can't submit this to any sort of physics journal and show them this GIF and be like, look guys, I did it! Because they'll be like, get out. I have to actually prove this scientifically. We're not going to get into the depths of it because that's like all this. But it looks something a little bit like this. This little smiley face boy just here, this beautiful, smiley, shiny, happy boy is polaritons. That is the signature for polaritons, which means that when it's below threshold, when it's that dull sort of colour, I've got the polaritons. I've got the light, and it's coupled with the matter, and we're forming the polaritons, and all is dandy and great. When I go above threshold, this big, intense line is it forming a superfluid. So we are check. And to kind of like, this is a reciprocal space, and it's all a bit physicsy and wavelength and angle and yada yada. If we look at an actual microscopic picture of said perovskite, this is it below threshold, pretty uninspiring, pretty uninteresting. This is it above threshold, very cute, very sort of constellation themed, very astrophysics, which is kind of the polar opposite of where I'm at, but very pretty, shiny, lovely, glorious, beautiful stuff. So, have we formed polaritons? Yes, we have. Have they formed a sorry, contrast with green is dull on this. Have they formed a superfluid? Yes, they have. Have they done it at room temperature? This is not me throwing out like a thing of like, haha, this is actually all at cryogenic temperatures and it's minus 270 degrees. Yes, it is all at room temperature. We've got tick for tick for tick. Which is excellent. It's fantastic news. It's beautiful. Stunning work. Yippee. So, you may be asking yourselves, where do we go from here? You might be like, wow, this is really groundbreaking. Why is he not doing more with this? Why is he technically working as a barista in a cafe on his university campus? I don't know. Good question. So, there's the first step, which is forming polaritons. Great, we've done that, we've got over that. Superfluid, tick, in the bag, let's go. What we kind of need to do is we start needing to make circuit prototypes, which is not a stage we're at yet. Once we get those circuit prototypes, we then scale it up for manufacture. And then, once we've got all of the logistics worked out with that, the planet hopefully dies like this. That's the idea. We are here. We need to be here. And you may be questioning what the next steps are. Well, it turns out the economy is not doing so fantastic right now. And the centre I was talking about that formed is no longer with us. RIP, they did not get another round of funding, so that's why I don't have a sweet little postdoc position right now. So, the next step would actually be forming these in an integrated circuit. However, I do not have time to talk about how we will do that. Suffice to say, there's quite a few issues with it. But hopefully within the next, genuinely, probably about 10 to 15 years, we can make progress on this. And you may even have cute little polaritons and superfluids in your devices at some point soon. That's me.
Alright, we might get some house lights so I can see some hands. I'm sure there will be heaps of questions. If you've got a question, raise your hand and I will be able to choose you. Ooh, everyone's a bit shy tonight. Yeah, in the middle there.
Hey, so as you scale down into like the macro, quantum kind of scaling, there's the obvious issue with kind of like solar radiation, bit for bit, and things like that as well. So as these circuits become like super sensitive, and you're kind of going like, gosh, how can we possibly make these delicate little gentlemen into an integrated circuit? What part does just like the sun play in this as well?
That's a very good question.
Maybe we'll just repeat the question for everyone.
Yeah, good.
Actually, maybe you repeat the question because I got
So, excellent question. So, obviously, these things are affected by light, as we were pointing out earlier. How would the sun affect these if they started being in circuits in the future? Would you end up having some like interference effects and stuff like that? The idea is with perovskites, they're very schwanky because of the fact you have like tunability with the light that they actually work with. So that whopping big laser boy I was talking about is a set wavelength. It is 515 nanometers. And we have an entire solar spectrum, and there's some stuff at that specific wavelength, but hopefully not enough to interfere with said circuit. Also, arguably, you just have the injection in the system, so you'd have some hopefully dark encapsulation on the outside that would actually keep it being affected by the light you're shining at it, as opposed to you put it in the sun and starts spitting out some horrible, horrible stuff like it's on X, formerly known as Twitter.
A question in the back there.
How many iterations of your talk is like, how do you get to the point where that was somehow intelligible to...
How many iterations of this talk?
How many iterations of this talk? Look, there has been a lot of trial and error, shall we say. Genuinely, there's like a sort of story I tell. I've always liked to chat. Clearly, my personality dictates that I like chatting shit to people, especially audiences that are captive. But as much as I liked the talky talk, talking about quantum physics in a way that is semi-digestible proves very, very difficult. And it was kind of through doing like sort of like public speaking as much as I could to part of my centre. Even like I joined in, there's a secondary school near me called John Monash Science School. I teamed up with them to sort of help like create a module on like quantum scale physics and what that means for technology. It's taken a few iterations. It took me absolutely screwing it in front of like 60 people one time. I had this competition called 3-minute thesis, and the idea is you need to explain your entire thesis like in 3 minutes or under. And I sort of made it to the round before that, and things had been going well. And the next round was like a month after, and I was like, oh, I've got this in the bag. I rehearsed this like 50 times. And I rehearsed it once or twice beforehand, thinking all will be fine. It was not. It was not fine. I literally screwed up the first line and then absolutely tanked it from there. And because it's 3 minutes, you have no time for recovery. If you make an error, that's it. And I was like, it was like a minute in, and I was flailing. I could see all these sad faces looking back at me. It was like an out-of-body experience. Genuinely, I like left my body and watched everybody else and went, oh, my body. And because it was a room of 60 people, I could like pick out individual faces. I kept going back to the same people grimacing at me. But it kind of took that experience to sort of realise, like, once you rehearse something, you think you've rehearsed it enough, rehearse it again, rehearse it again, rehearse it 10 times more. And it was kind of like through rehearsals, through talking to friends, through talking to my mum, who despises physics and maths and any of that, I kind of like honed it down into something that's tangibly digestible. Honestly, a lot of this presentation was made for tonight. A few bits were like pulled from other presentations, but like most of it was like me just grinding at the end of my cafe shift.
Do we have any other questions? Yep, in the centre there. In a very quick hand, so.
Yeah, sorry. Does this kind of technology change how traditional semiconductor science thinks about the Landau limit, or like how far we can go in terms of size and heat and things like that? Or
Theoretically, yes.
Reversible computation?
One thing you'll remember with this is that it is more the wires than the actual transistors I was talking about. So a lot of the prof cases to replace the wires is taking technology from point A to point B. It's taking that 1 or that 0 from point A to point B. It's not generating a 1 or 0 in the first place. So the other part of the centre, which I didn't talk about because this was already enough, the other part of the centre, and I didn't work on this, I don't care, they can do their own thing. The other part of the centre was replacing the transistors themselves. How do we create these 1 or 0? So you guys remember I was talking about how quantum kind of screws everything up for everyone? The idea, like the whole problem is because you're trying to create stuff in something, and when you're making something smaller and smaller, essentially the thing it's in, it starts having issues with it flowing outside of it. One of the goals of our center was to create something going around something. So you kind of have a 1 being it rotating clockwise and a 0 being it rotating anti-clockwise. You can get that smaller and smaller and it's still going to work. The whole idea is you create that like down to atomic levels and you basically have like these clockwise and anti-clockwise flows just sort of like creating this information. As for Landau limits within that regime, I'm less sure. This is more like, we got our data, let's swing it from point A to point B using as little real estate as possible.
We might have one quick question because I think Mitko has a surprise for us.
I do have a little surprise, a sweet little cute surprise.
We might go over here.
Do you have a favourite theory for the reasoning behind the double slit experiment? Like, do you think electrons are sentient or something? Like, you have
What's your favourite theory?
What's favourite theory? Do I think electrons have any train of thought? This is getting very much into that. This is getting into that like fundamental nodes thing of like we're all just technically vibrations. So just really real. I actually teach double slit, literally in 3rd year. So like trying to get around a lot of these very abstract and complex concepts like the double slit. It was really difficult. So, for example, I'm not going to swing all the way back to the slide, but luckily I prepared a slide. This is, what's coming next step? These bad boys, these excitons, they are an electron hole pair. And an electron hole pair is basically formed when an electron leaves one area and goes to another area. And the whole idea is you can think of it like digging sand at a beach, and there's a hole left behind. You would think that that hole wouldn't have any mass and it wouldn't have any charge, it would just kind of be there because the electron isn't there. It turns out it's quantum like it's just this guy that just ruins everything. It does have a mass, it does have a charge. So a lot of stuff with theories and stuff like that and double slits, kind of like just take it at face value because if you try and delve deep, you're going to drive yourself insane. And I already had very little mental capacity to yours. Alright, so this is, we're going to skip the potential questions.
Just maybe close your eyes for 1 minute before.
Oh, it's fine. I was worried I might be asked about it. I got asked about it in one previous presentation. I had actual backing as to why it actually helps you relate with your audience more. Scientific backing for polymath. So, I have a fun little cute activity before the break, which I've taken forward from a little while ago. Experimental physicist, PhD physicist, very good at science. Also turns out really shit at drawing, like a lot of the time. I'm an exception, because I'm creative. But you can tell by the dungarees, like this is Northside coding. There are 10 animals, just up here, that are drawn by either 7 to 8-year-old children from my mate's class, or experimental and theoretical physicists with either a PhD or going to obtain a PhD. Can you tell what these animals are and who they were drawn by? There's no real prize at the end of this, apart from the sense of satisfaction of winning. I probably should have won a prize, but hey ho.
We can do a free drink.
I got a free drink in my pocket. I was like, you can have mine. It's fine. All right, beautiful. Number 1. Does anybody have any idea what animal this might be? Orangutan. Sloth was close. It is orangutan. Orangutan. Was it drawn by a child or was it drawn by a PhD physicist? Hands up for child. Hands up for PhD physicist. Oh, yeah! Let's go! Good job, guys! Alright, number 2. What is it? Fox, yes, nice. Foxy boy. Was it drawn by a child? Hands up. Or a PhD physicist? Hands up. Again, majority wins!
Not a lot of faith in the physicists out here.
I do not have any faith in them. Number 3! Shark. Yeah, this one's easy, come on. It's a shark. What was it drawn by? Hands up for child. Hands up for PhD physicist. HA does not hold a PhD in quantum physics. What is it? Yeah, you big nerds. It's too basic for us. We need a Mexican thing that can live forever. Excellent. Oliver, no! No! That makes twist because it's so good and all the rest of it knocks out the park. Damn it. Alright, I'm still getting excited. What is this? Yeah, armadillo! That's it! Armadillo! What is it drawn by? Hands up a child! Yeah! What is this? Yeah, okay, damn, I thought it would take people longer. Is it an ant? Is it a cat? It's a cat! What is it drawn by a child? Hands up. PhD physicist, hands up. Howard, still hands up, come on, guys. Katerina, the name's Cat and she drew a cat, it's very cute. Yeah. Number 7, what is it? I actually don't remember what this one is. It's one of two things. I think you're right though. I think it is a beaver. It's a beaver. Yeah, it's not a squirrel. Hands up for child. Hands up for PhD physicists. Guys getting on the ball. Samuel, who's in the audience tonight? That's you. You don't even remember it. Alrighty. What is it? Anteater! Look at the little guys! They're screaming for help! Where's it drawn by? Hands up, child. Hands up, a PhD physicist. Plot twist! Number 9! Hannah! Yeah! Hannah! Where's it drawn by? Hands up, child. Hands up, a PhD physicist. And last but not least, big boy. Yeah. It's a giraffe. Hands up for child. Hands up for PhD physicist. Oh, that's like 50-50 split. Its legs don't even connect to its body.